The plasma bolt missed Jake Morrison's head by inches, scorching the metal bulkhead behind him. He rolled behind a cargo container, heart hammering as return fire lit up the corridor in violent bursts of blue energy. 3 months ago, he'd been a freight hauler running supplies between Earth colonies. Now he was pinned down in the royal palace of the Valorian Empire, caught in the middle of an assassination attempt he never saw coming. The day had started simple enough. Jake's ship, the Wanderer, had been flagged for inspection at the Valorian homeworld's orbital station. Standard procedure, they said, except the inspectors wore ceremonial armor and escorted him directly to the surface. No explanation, no choice. Princess Narration stood 20 feet away, separated from Jake by a wall of her personal guards. Even in the chaos, she was stunning. Violet skin that seemed to shimmer with its own light, silver hair that moved like liquid metal, and eyes the color of Earth's oceans. Those eyes found Jake's across the firefight, and something impossible passed between them. Recognition, understanding, as if they'd known each other across lifetimes. The attackers were Krovar mercenaries, hulking reptilian creatures hired by someone who wanted the princess dead. They'd infiltrated the palace during what should have been a routine trade negotiation. Jake had been in the wrong place at the wrong time, or maybe exactly where he needed to be. When the first explosion ripped through the throne room, instinct took over. He'd grabbed a fallen guard's weapon and started firing. Lyran's telepathic voice brushed against Jake's mind like silk on steel. "Human, why do you fight for me? You owe us nothing." Jake ducked as another volley shredded the container above him. "Because it's the right thing to do," he thought back, hoping she could hear. "Because nobody deserves to die like this." Her mental laughter was warm despite the violence. "You are different from the others of your kind we have met." The firefight intensified. More guards poured into the hall, pushing the Krovar back. Jake's borrowed weapon clicked empty. He tossed it aside and sprinted toward Lyraen's position, sliding behind her defensive line just as a grenade detonated where he'd been hiding. The shock wave threw him forward. Strong hands caught him, Lyraen's hands. Up close, she was even more extraordinary, 7 feet tall, elegant, and powerful. Her touch sent electricity through his nervous system, not painful, but awakening. The palace guards finished off the last attackers, but Jake barely noticed. He was drowning in those ocean eyes. "You saved my life," she said directly into his mind. "By Valorian law, you have earned a boon. Any request within my power to grant." Jake should have asked for money, for a better ship, for trade rights. Smart things, practical things. Instead, exhausted and running on adrenaline, he whispered without thinking, "I wish I could wed her." The words left his mouth before his brain caught up. Horror flooded through him. He'd just proposed to an alien princess he'd known for maybe 10 minutes. During an assassination attempt, she'd probably have him executed for the insult. But Lyrian smiled, and it was like watching a star being born. "Then you shall," she said aloud, her voice carrying through the damaged throne room. The remaining guards froze. Jake's world tilted sideways. What had he just done? The medical bay smelled of ozone and something floral Jake couldn't identify. He sat on an examination table while a Valorian physician scanned him for injuries. Minor burns, some bruising, nothing serious. His mind was another story. It kept replaying the moment over and over. Those 3 terrible, wonderful words. Lyraen entered without guards, having dismissed them. In private, she seemed somehow more real and more otherworldly. She pulled up a chair, folding her long legs with practiced grace. "We should talk about your boon request." Jake's face burned. "Look, I'm sorry. That was stupid." The adrenaline, the fighting, I wasn't thinking clearly. You can just forget I said anything. Why would I forget it? Lyrian tilted her head, genuinely curious. You spoke your heart's truth. That is rare and precious. My heart's truth? Jake laughed bitterly. Princess? I don't even know you. You don't know me. I'm a cargo hauler who got lucky in a firefight. You're royalty of an interstellar empire. This is insane. Is it? Lyrian reached out, her violet fingers hovering near Jake's hand but not quite touching. My people have certain abilities your scientists would call psychic. We sense emotional resonance, the deeper currents that flow beneath surface thoughts. When you entered the throne room today, I felt something I have never felt before. A connection. A recognition. Jake's throat went dry. I felt it too, but that doesn't mean we should get married. That's not how things work. How do they work then? Tell me about human courtship. Well, usually people date. They spend time together. They learn about each other. They fall in love slowly, over months or years. They don't just decide to get married after one conversation. Lyrian's smile turned sad. I am the last of my line, Jake Morrison. My parents were killed 3 years ago in an attack similar to today's. The council has been pressuring me to choose a consort from among the noble houses. Today's assassination attempt was orchestrated by Lord Vrax, who wanted to eliminate me and claim the throne for his family. She stood, pacing to the window that overlooked the capital city. Towers of crystal and light stretched toward the purple sky. I have months, perhaps weeks, before the council forces a political marriage. I would rather choose my own fate. And you choose a random human? Jake shook his head. There have to be better options. Name one. She turned back to him, and the vulnerability in her expression was devastating. Name one person in this entire empire who has proven they would risk their life for mine with no expectation of reward. Who fought for me simply because it was right. Who looked at me and saw a person worth protecting, not a throne worth claiming. Jake had no answer. The physician quietly excused himself, leaving them alone. The silence stretched. Finally, Jake spoke. If we did this, really did this, what would it mean? What would I be getting into? Lyrian returned to her chair. Marriage in Valarian culture is both political and spiritual. It is a bonding of minds as well as a legal contract. You would become prince consort, sharing in my authority and responsibilities. You would be expected to learn our ways, our politics, our history. She paused. And you would be a target. Everyone who wants me dead would want you dead as well. Fantastic. Jake rubbed his face. Anything else? The bonding ceremony involves a telepathic merger. Our minds would touch at the deepest levels. We would know each other completely, all secrets revealed. It cannot be undone once performed. Some humans find the intimacy unbearable. So I'd be trapped in a marriage with someone who knows every embarrassing thing I've ever done, every fear, every mistake, while people actively try to kill us both. Jake met her eyes. Why are you even considering this? Because in 10 minutes you showed me more genuine care than I have experienced in 3 years of court politics. Because when I touched your mind during the battle, I felt honor and courage, and a loneliness that mirrors my own. Because I am tired of being alone, and I think you are too. The words hit harder than any plasma bolt. Jake thought about his life. 5 years in space, running freight routes, eating ration packs in an empty ship. His family was gone, lost to a colony plague. He had no ties, no home. Just the endless dark between stars and the numbing routine of another delivery, another payday, another empty bunk. Lyrian was offering him something he'd stopped believing existed, purpose, partnership. A reason to wake up that wasn't just survival. "This is crazy," he said quietly. "Yes, we'll probably both regret it. Possibly. People will think I'm taking advantage of you. Undoubtedly. And I have no idea how to be a prince. I will teach you." Jake stood, walking to where she sat. Up close, the height difference was obvious. She could look down at him without effort, but when their eyes met, they felt equal. What if the connection we felt was just adrenaline? What if this doesn't work? Lyrian stood as well, and now she was the one looking up at him through her lashes. Then we will know we tried for something real, instead of settling for something safe. Her hand finally bridged the gap, touching his. The contact sent sparks through his nerves. "Will you take this chance with me, Jake Morrison?" Every rational part of his brain screamed, no. This was reckless, impulsive, doomed to fail. But his heart, the part that had whispered those fateful words, knew better. He'd spent 5 years playing it safe, and safety had gotten him nothing but loneliness. "Yes," he said, "I'll do it." The smile that broke across Lorian's face could have powered a sun. "Then we must move quickly. The bonding ceremony requires preparation, and we have enemies who will not wait." She touched a communication panel on the wall. "Summon the High Priestess and the Council of Elders. Tell them the princess has chosen her consort." The response came back in rapid, musical Valorian. Jake caught enough to understand shock and confusion. Lyrian rattled off commands in her own language, her voice taking on the authority of someone born to command. When she finished, she turned back to Jake. "You have 4 hours to prepare. My attendants will help you bathe and dress appropriately. Do you have any questions?" "About 1,000. Jake's head spun. "But I guess they can wait." "Good. Because I need to convince the council this is not insanity." She moved toward the door, then paused. "Jake, thank you for choosing me." "You chose me first," he pointed out. "Perhaps we chose each other." Then she was gone, leaving Jake alone with the terrifying reality of what he'd agreed to. The attendants arrived within minutes. 3 Valorians, 2 male and 1 female, all moving with efficient grace. They spoke minimal English but made their intentions clear. Jake was stripped, scrubbed, and dressed in formal robes that felt like wearing liquid starlight. They tried to explain the ceremony's significance, but the translations were rough. "Bonding of souls," one said. "Minds become one mind. You see her truth. She sees your truth. No lies possible." "What if she doesn't like what she sees?" Jake asked. The attendant looked confused. "Then bonding fails." "But this not happen often. The resonance chooses well." Not exactly reassuring, Jake studied himself in the mirror. The robes were deep blue, shot through with silver thread. They'd done something to his hair, slicked it back in a style that looked almost Valorian. He barely recognized himself. A chime sounded. The female attendant opened the door to reveal an elderly Valorian woman in elaborate ceremonial garb. Her skin was pale violet, almost white, and her silver hair fell to her waist in intricate braids. "I am High Priestess Kaelin," she said in perfect English. "I will oversee your bonding. We must speak plainly before the ceremony begins." "All right." Jake nodded. "Speak plainly. Do you understand what you are attempting?" A cross-species bonding has never been successfully completed in our recorded history. Human minds are structured differently than Valorian minds. The psychic merger may be painful or impossible. But it might work? It might. Kellen's expression was unreadable. The princess believes strongly in this connection. "I have known her since birth. I have never seen her so certain of anything. That weighs heavily in your favor. Still, you must understand the risks. If the bonding fails during the ceremony, both your minds could be damaged. You might lose memories, personality traits, even basic cognitive function. Jake's stomach dropped. And if it succeeds? Then you will be bound to Lirayan in ways your language cannot adequately describe. You will feel her emotions as echoes of your own. You will know when she is in danger or distress. You will share dreams. Over time, you may even develop some of her psychic abilities. She gestured for him to follow her into the corridor. The council waits. They will witness the bonding and confirm its legitimacy. Do you consent to proceed knowing these dangers? I do. Then may the ancestors guide you both. The ceremonial chamber was vast, walls carved from a single piece of pale blue crystal that seemed to glow from within. Hundreds of Valorians filled tiered seating, all dressed in formal attire. Jake's entrance caused a ripple of whispers. He felt their eyes on him, judging, assessing. Some faces showed curiosity, others skepticism, a few outright hostility. At the chamber's center stood a raised platform surrounded by a circle of carved stones. Each stone was inscribed with symbols that hurt to look at directly. And there, waiting on the platform, was Lirayan. She wore robes of deep purple that complemented her skin, and her silver hair was unbound, flowing over her shoulders. She was magnificent and terrifying, and Jake's breath caught in his chest. "Approach," Priestess Kaelin commanded. Jake climbed the steps to the platform. Up close, he could see Lirian's nervousness in the slight tremor of her hands. She was just as scared as he was. Somehow that helped. "Are you ready?" she asked telepathically. "No, but let's do it anyway." Her mental laughter steadied them both. Kaelin began speaking in Valorian, her voice resonating through the chamber. The crowd fell silent. She took Lyran's right hand and Jake's right hand, placing them together. The contact was electric, stronger than before. Then she produced a length of silver cord and wound it around their joined hands. "The bonding begins," Kaelin said. "Open your minds to each other. Let the barriers fall. Become one truth." Jake didn't know how to open his mind. He just thought about Lirain, about the connection he'd felt, about the choice he was making. And suddenly, it was like a door opening in his skull. Lirain's consciousness poured in. He felt everything she was. Her grief over her parents' deaths, sharp and raw even after years. Her fear of failing her people. Her loneliness in a palace full of courtiers who wanted her crown, not her. Her love for the stars and open spaces. Her secret passion for human music, especially old Earth jazz. Her hope that maybe, just maybe, this strange human could understand her in ways no one else ever had. And she felt him. His childhood on Mars colony, losing his family to the plague. The guilt he carried for surviving. His years drifting through space, running from connections because everyone he loved had left. His secret belief that he was fundamentally unlovable. His courage that came from having nothing left to lose. His deep, unspoken wish for a place to belong. Their minds touched, merged, became a single, unified experience. The pain was excruciating, two different patterns trying to align. Jake screamed, or maybe Lirain did, or maybe they both did. The chamber disappeared into white light. Then understanding bloomed. They were different but compatible, two melodies that harmonized instead of clashed. Jake felt Lyrian's psychic abilities activate in his own mind, weak but present. Lyrian felt his human stubbornness and adaptability strengthen her resolve. They were becoming something new while remaining themselves, The light faded. Jake found himself on his knees, Lyraean beside him, their hands still bound. Callan was speaking, but he couldn't focus on the words. He could feel Lyraean's heartbeat as if it were his own, could sense her relief and joy and lingering fear. It worked, she thought to him. Against all odds, it actually worked. The council erupted. Some cheered, others shouted protests. One elderly male in elaborate robes stood, his face twisted with rage. "This is an abomination. A human cannot be consort to the throne. I demand this bonding be annulled." "It cannot be undone," Callan said calmly. "The bonding is complete and legitimate. Jake Morrison is now Prince Consort of the Valorian Empire, with all rights and responsibilities that entails." The dissenting counselor, Lord Vrax according to Lyran's mental identification, turned to the crowd. "You would accept this? A primitive alien sharing our princess's bed and throne? He is beneath her." Jake felt anger spike through Lyraean. She rose, pulling him up with her. The silver cord fell away, its purpose complete. When she spoke, her voice carried absolute authority. "Jake Morrison proved his worth when he fought to save my life, asking nothing in return. He proved it again by accepting a bonding that could have destroyed his mind. What have you proven, Vrax, except your hunger for power?" Vrax's face went purple. "I have served this empire for 40 years. You have served yourself." Lyran's eyes blazed. "And I know it was you who hired the Krovar assassins. Your financial records will tell the story. Did you think I would not investigate?" The chamber went deadly silent. Vrax's hand moved toward a concealed weapon. Jake didn't think, just acted. He threw himself between Lyran and the Lord, a human shield against whatever came next. But Lyran was faster, her psychic power lashing out like a whip. Vrax froze, every muscle locked. "Guards," Lyran commanded. "Arrest Lord Vrax for treason and attempted regicide." The palace guards moved swiftly, binding Vrax even as Lyran released her mental hold. The Lord was dragged away, still screaming threats and denials. The remaining council members sat in stunned silence. "Anyone else have objections to my choice of consort?" Lyraean asked sweetly. No one spoke. Good. "Then we have much work to do. The Krovar attack revealed security weaknesses we must address. My new husband will be learning our systems and protocols. I expect your full cooperation in his education." She pulled Jake close, a clear statement of unity. "This session is concluded." They left the chamber together, Lyraean maintaining her regal bearing until they reached a private corridor. Then she sagged against the wall, the mental and physical strain catching up. Jake supported her weight easily, their bond letting him anticipate her needs. "That was intense," he said aloud. "You have no idea." She laughed shakily. "Using psychic force to restrain Vrax took more energy than I should have expended so soon after the bonding. I may have overextended myself. What happens now? Now we rest. Tomorrow you begin learning how to be a prince, and we figure out how to rule an empire that half wants you dead." She looked up at him. "Having second thoughts?" "Constantly. But I'm not going anywhere." "Good, because I am not letting you go." Jake's first official day as Prince Consort began at dawn with an attempted poisoning. The servant who brought breakfast fled when Jake's newly awakened psychic sense detected hostile intent radiating from the food. Guards pursued the would-be assassin while Jake sat at the ornate table, staring at the beautiful pastries that would have killed him. Lyraean entered, still in sleeping robes. Her silver hair disheveled, she'd felt his alarm through their bond and come running. "Are you hurt?" "Just my appetite." Jake pushed the tray away. "How many more of these should I expect?" until our enemies realize you cannot be easily removed. She sat beside him, taking his hand. The bond lets them feel the strength between us. It frightens them. Her expression darkened. I should have anticipated this. I am sorry, you can't protect me from everything. Jake squeezed her hand. Besides, I detected the poison. That's new. Your psychic abilities are developing faster than expected. Kalen will want to test your progress today. She stood, pulling him up. But first, breakfast. Real breakfast, prepared by people who do not wish you dead. They ate in Lyrian's private chambers, served by her personal attendant, a young Valorian named Kira, who'd been with the princess since childhood. The food was strange but delicious, and Kira chattered away about palace gossip. Apparently, Jake's bonding was the scandal of the century. Half the court was taking bets on how long he'd survive. Cheerful, Jake muttered. They bet on everything, Lyran explained. There are currently wagers on when we will produce an heir, whether you will take a Valorian name, and if you can learn our combat arts before someone challenges you to formal duel.
Can I be challenged to a duel?
Jake asked nervously. Technically, yes. Any noble can challenge another to settle disputes through combat. Lyrian smiled at his expression. Do not worry. I will not allow such challenges until you are trained. That's assuming I can be trained. Jake had never been a fighter. The firefight yesterday had been pure luck and adrenaline. You have natural reflexes and courage. Lyran's mental voice was warm with confidence. Commander Zane will teach you. He trained me, and I am still alive despite many attempts otherwise. Commander Zane turned out to be a massive Valorian male, 8 feet of solid muscle and perpetual scowl. He looked Jake up and down in the training hall and grunted disapprovingly. This is what the princes bonded? You're small even for a human. Jake bristled. I held my own against the Crovar. You hid behind cargo containers and fired blindly. That is not combat. That is panic. Zane tossed him a training staff. Show me your stance. The next 2 hours were humiliating. Zane moved with impossible speed, swatting Jake's clumsy attacks aside and landing bruising strikes in return. The Valorian didn't hold back, and Jake was soon covered in welts and breathing hard. But he refused to quit. Each time Zane knocked him down, he got back up. The commander's expression shifted from contempt to grudging interest. You are weak and slow and completely untrained, Zane said finally. But you do not quit. That is something. We will train every morning. In 6 months, you might survive a fight against a drunk Valorian child. That's the nicest thing you've said all day, Jake wheezed. Do not let it go to your head. Zane offered a hand, pulling Jake to his feet. The princess chose better than I expected. That is enough for today. Go see the healers before you bruise completely. The medical bay became Jake's second home over the following weeks. Between Zane's brutal training, Kalen's psychic exercises, and the various tutors teaching him Valorian history, language, and politics, he was constantly exhausted and injured. But he improved. His psychic abilities grew stronger. He could sense emotions in people nearby, could send thoughts to Lyrian from anywhere in the palace. His combat skills remained terrible, but at least now he knew how to fall without breaking bones. Iraean was his anchor through it all. Their bond deepened each day, becoming less jarring and more natural. They learned each other's rhythms, how to share space without words. Jake discovered she liked to work late into the night, processing the endless demands of governance. She learned he needed morning solitude to center himself before facing the court. They found compromises, small intimacies that built into something real, but the threats continued. 3 more assassination attempts in as many weeks. each more sophisticated than the last. A rigged grav lift that nearly sent Jake plummeting 50 floors. A nanotoxin in his ceremonial robes that would have eaten through his skin. A security droid reprogrammed to target humans. The palace was a war zone disguised as elegance. "We need to take offensive action," Jake argued one evening. They were in the war room reviewing security reports. "We cannot just defend forever." "What do you propose?" Lyran studied the holographic display showing known threats. "The conspirators hide behind layers of deniability. We find proof. Real, undeniable evidence." Jake pointed to several council members flagged as suspicious. "These nobles all benefit from destabilizing your rule. They all have connections to off-world mercenaries. Someone is coordinating them. Investigating sitting council members would cause political chaos," Lyran said. But her tone was thoughtful, not dismissive. "More chaos than assassination attempts every few days?" Jake met her eyes. "They are waiting for us to fail. Show them we will not." Lorraine was quiet for a long moment. Then she touched the communication panel. "Summon Intelligence Director Tavok. Tell him to bring everything he has on council members with suspicious off-world contacts." Tavok arrived within the hour. A slight Valorian with sharp features and sharper eyes. He laid out files detailing financial irregularities, encrypted communications, and shell companies. The pattern was clear once you knew where to look. 5 council members were funneling money to various criminal organizations, all with connections to anti-human extremist groups. "This is enough to arrest them," Tavok said. "But we will make powerful enemies." "We already have powerful enemies," Jake pointed out. "At least these ones will be in prison." The arrests happened at dawn, coordinated strikes that swept up all 5 conspirators before they could warn each other. The palace erupted in outrage. Loyalists to the arrested nobles demanded their release. Others claimed political persecution. The council devolved into screaming matches, but Lyran stood firm, presenting the evidence publicly and daring anyone to defend treason. Jake stood beside her through it all, a visible symbol of her resolve. The bond between them was obvious to anyone with psychic sensitivity, a blazing connection that declared their unity. Some nobles softened their opposition, seeing that the human consort was not just a political stunt but a genuine partner. Others doubled down on their hatred. One such opponent was Lady Severin, a powerful noble who controlled significant military resources. She called for a vote of no confidence in Lyrian's rule, claiming the princess had become mentally compromised by bonding with an alien. The accusation was carefully worded to avoid outright treason, but the intent was clear. Lyran could have refused the vote, but that would only fuel the accusations of weakness. Instead, she called an emergency session of the full council. The entire palace gathered to witness, tensions crackling through the air. Lady Severin spoke first, her arguments polished and damning. She presented medical reports from doctors who claimed cross-species bonding caused neurological damage. She cited historical precedents for removing compromised rulers. She painted Lyran as a tragic figure manipulated by a cunning alien who wanted to steal the throne. Jake felt Lyran's anger through their bond, but also her hurt. The accusations cut deep because they exploited her worst fears, that she was failing her people, that the bonding had been a mistake, that she was too weak to rule. "Let me speak," Jake thought to her. "Let me answer this." "You do not have to defend yourself," Lyran replied. "I am not defending myself. I am defending us." Lyran gave him a slight nod. The chamber quieted as Jake stepped forward. He'd been practicing his Valorian, but this was too important for a language he was still learning. He spoke in English. knowing Lyran would translate simultaneously through the palace's telepathic network. Lady Severin paints me as a manipulator, as an alien who seduced your princess for power. Let me be clear about something. I did not want this. I was a freight hauler. I had a simple life, no responsibilities, no one depending on me. Then I walked into that throne room and saw assassins trying to kill someone who did not deserve to die. I fought because it was the right thing to do, not because I expected a reward. He took a breath, aware of hundreds of eyes on him. The princess offered me a boon, any request within her power to grant. I could have asked for wealth, for trade privileges, for a new ship. Instead, exhausted and not thinking clearly, I said I wished I could marry her. And she said yes. Not because she was compromised. Not because I manipulated her, but because she recognized something true in that moment of vulnerability. Jake gestured to Lyrian. The bonding ceremony could have killed us both. We knew the risks. We went through with it anyway because we both wanted something real in a universe full of political games and assassination attempts. And yes, I am human. I am alien to you. But that does not make our bond false. It makes it proof that connection transcends species. He turned to face Lady Severin directly. You accuse the princess of being compromised? I accuse you of being afraid that a human could be worthy of standing beside Valarian royalty, afraid that your careful political calculations are being disrupted by something as unpredictable as genuine affection, afraid that maybe your princess does not need your approval to choose her own fate. The chamber was silent. Lady Severin's face was unreadable. Then, shockingly, she laughed. It was not cruel, but genuinely amused. Well-spoken, human. You have more spine than I expected. She stood, addressing the council. I withdraw my motion for a vote of no confidence. If nothing else, this consort is entertaining. The tension broke. Other nobles chuckled. The crisis passed, at least for now. Jake returned to Lyrian's side, legs shaking from adrenaline. She took his hand, squeezing gently. That was foolish and brave, she thought to him. I am proud of you. I probably just made more enemies. You made allies, too. Look, several nobles who had been openly hostile now watched Jake with new expressions. Not quite respect, but consideration. He was no longer just the human who got lucky. He was someone who would stand and fight for what he believed. The session ended. Lyrian dismissed the council, her authority reestablished. But Jake knew this was just one battle. The war for acceptance would continue, possibly for years. He was prepared for that now. Whatever came next, he would face it standing beside Lyrian, bound by choice and something deeper than politics. They returned to their chambers, exhausted. Lyran collapsed on the sitting room couch, still in her formal robes. Jake sat beside her, and she leaned against him, letting down the mask of royalty she wore for the court. Thank you, she said quietly, for fighting for us. Always, Jake replied. That was the truth of their bond. Not the mystical psychic connection, but the simple choice to show up for each other every day, to stand together against whatever the universe threw at them. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, more assassination attempts, more political maneuvering, more people who would never accept a human as consort. But tonight, they had this moment, this peace, this truth that they had chosen each other, and that choice mattered more than anything else. Jake felt Lyrian's mind touching his, sharing the same thought. We are going to be okay. Yes, he agreed, we are. The war came 6 weeks after the bonding. Not the quiet war of assassination and politics, but actual military conflict. A coalition of border worlds declared independence, backed by mysterious benefactors who supplied them with advanced weapons and warships. The Valorian Empire faced its first major rebellion in 2 centuries, and Lyrian had to respond. Jake stood in the command center, watching holographic displays show enemy fleet movements. He'd learned enough military strategy to understand they were badly outnumbered. The rebel forces had somehow acquired dreadnoughts that rivaled the Empire's best ships. Someone with deep pockets and deeper grudges was bankrolling this insurrection. "We should negotiate," one admiral suggested. "Offer the border worlds autonomous status. That would encourage every discontented system to rebel." Another countered. "We must respond with force." Lyrian listened to the arguments, her face calm despite the turmoil Jake felt through their bond. When the admirals finished, she spoke. "We will offer peace terms first. Real terms, not empty gestures. If they refuse, then we respond militarily. But I will not start a war without exhausting diplomatic options." "Your Highness," the first admiral protested, "showing weakness now will embolden them. Offering peace is not weakness." Lyrian's voice was steel wrapped in silk. "It is strength. Only those afraid of losing resort immediately to violence." Jake admired her conviction, even as he worried about the practicality. The rebels had already fired on Imperial patrol ships, killing hundreds. They were not interested in peace. But Lyrian needed to try, needed to prove to her people and herself that she valued life over easy military victories. The peace delegation left within hours, carrying Lyrian's terms. Fair taxation, genuine representation in the Imperial Senate, protection of local customs and governance. It was more than generous. The rebels sent back the delegation's heads in a cargo container, along with a declaration of total war. Jake held Lyrian while she grieved for the murdered diplomats, feeling her pain echo through their bond. The Empress who wanted peace would have to become the warrior who delivered destruction. It was a transformation he knew would scar her, but there was no other choice. "We go to war," Lyrian announced to the council, "but we do so with honor. No civilian targets, no scorched earth tactics. We will show these rebels what true strength looks like. And you, Jake Morrison, will be coming with me." Jake stared at her. "What?" "The flagship needs its prince consort. You are part of the royal command structure now." She touched his face gently. "Besides, I am not leaving you here where assassins can reach you more easily. On the ship you will be surrounded by loyal military personnel." "I have 0 military experience," Jake pointed out. "I will be useless in actual combat." "You have other skills? Your psychic sensitivity is growing stronger. You might detect threats I cannot, and your human perspective may be valuable in unexpected ways. Commander Zane will assign you duties appropriate to your abilities," which turned out to be Inventory Management and Morale Officer. Jake spent the voyage to the combat zone ensuring supplies were properly distributed and talking to nervous crew members. It was not glamorous, but it was necessary. The youngest soldiers, barely adults, clustered around the human prince consort who'd married their princess for love. He became a symbol of hope, proof that impossible things could work out. The flagship, the Starfire, was a marvel of engineering, 3 miles long, bristling with weapons, carrying a complement of 5,000 personnel. Jake got lost daily in the endless corridors, saved only by his psychic connection to Lyrian that pulled him back to familiar spaces. He trained with Commander Zane in the ship's combat halls, improving slowly. He studied tactical displays with the military officers, learning how space battles actually worked beyond the simplified versions from entertainment media. and he prepared for the likelihood that he might die out here. The rebel fleet was formidable. The coming battle would be brutal. Jake recorded messages for Lyraen in case he did not survive, telling her everything he'd never quite said aloud, that she'd given his life meaning, that bonding with her was the best decision he'd ever made, that if he had to die, dying beside her was acceptable. He never sent the messages. Lyran found them in his personal files and confronted him in their quarters, eyes blazing. "You will not die. I will not allow it." "You might not have a choice," Jake said gently. "We are going into battle against overwhelming odds. Then we beat the odds." Lyrian pulled him close, her height letting her rest her chin on his head. "I did not bond with you just to lose you to some rebel fleet. You are mine, Jake Morrison. The universe does not get to take you back." Her fierce protectiveness warmed him. "I am not planning to die. But if something happens, I need you to know I do not regret any of this." "Nothing will happen," Lyraen insisted, "but if it does, I am coming with you. We bonded for life, which means life or death. You do not escape me that easily." They held each other as the Starfire jumped to hyperspace, carrying them toward war. The battlefield was a debris field orbiting a gas giant. 3 rebel dreadnoughts faced off against the Imperial fleet, smaller ships darting between the massive vessels like insects around giants. The Starfire took up position at the formation's center, Lyran commanding from the bridge. Jake stood at a secondary station, monitoring ship systems and trying not to panic. Space combat was nothing like the entertainment versions. It was slow, calculated, vessels maneuvering for positioning over hours. Then sudden violence when weapons came into range. The Starfire shuddered under enemy fire, shields flaring as energy bolts impacted. "Concentrate fire on their lead vessel," Lyrian commanded. "Target their engine array." The Imperial fleet focused fire, lances of directed energy hammering the rebel flagship. Its shields held barely. Then it returned fire, a devastating barrage that crippled 2 Imperial cruisers. The battle devolved into chaos, ships on both sides taking damage. Jake felt something wrong through his psychic sense, a presence on the ship that did not belong. Hostile intent radiating from somewhere below decks. He grabbed a communication panel. "Security, we have an intruder." Section 12. Lower decks. "How do you know that?" the security officer demanded. "I just know." "Send a team now." The security team found 3 saboteurs planting explosives near the reactor core. They'd infiltrated weeks ago, hidden among the crew. Without Jake's warning, they would have destroyed the ship from within. The saboteurs were eliminated, the bombs defused, but it was too close. "Your human saved the ship," Commander Zane said to Lyrian. His psychic sense is more useful than expected. The battle raged for 16 hours. Both sides were exhausted, ships limping and shields failing. Then Jake felt another wrongness, but this time from outside the ship. Something about the rebel flagship's positioning. It was moving away from the fight, almost retreating. But the trajectory was wrong. "They are running," an officer reported. "The flagship is fleeing." "No," Jake said suddenly. "They are lining up a jump to hyperspace, right through our formation." "Ships cannot jump that close to a gravity well," the officer protested. "It would rip them apart." Lyrian understood immediately. "They are going to jump anyway. The hyperspace rupture will destroy everything nearby. All ships, emergency evasion, maximum burn away from the flagship." The Imperial fleet scattered. Seconds later, the rebel flagship jumped, and space tore open. The hyperspace rupture created a temporary black hole, dragging in 2 rebel ships and 1 Imperial destroyer that had not moved fast enough. The gravitational shear ripped the vessels into component atoms, then the rupture collapsed, and the battlefield went eerily quiet. The remaining rebel ships, leaderless and demoralized, surrendered. The battle was won, but at tremendous cost. Thousands dead on both sides. A scar in space that would take years to fully dissipate. Jake found Liren on the bridge, still in her command chair, staring at the casualty reports. He knew she was blaming herself for every death, calculating how she could have done better. He took her hand, sending comfort through their bond. "You won," he said quietly. "You saved the Empire." "At what price?" Lorraine's mental voice was anguished. "All those lives lost because I could not prevent this war. All those lives saved because you ended the war quickly. The rebels would have drawn this out for years, killing far more people. You did what you had to do." She leaned into him, drawing strength from his presence. The bridge crew politely ignored their princess showing vulnerability. Jake held her, feeling the weight of command crushing down on them both. This was the reality of ruling. Not the ceremonies and pretty speeches, but the impossible choices, and the people who died because of them. They returned to the capital as heroes. Parades, medals, speeches praising their courage and leadership. Jake hated every moment. He was not a hero. He was just a man who'd gotten lucky, who'd used his psychic sense to detect threats. Real heroes were the soldiers who'd died fighting, the crew members who'd kept the Starfire functioning under fire, the pilots who'd flown into enemy fire to protect their comrades. But the Empire needed symbols, and Jake and Liren were perfect. The warrior princess and her human consort united against all threats. The propaganda value was immense. Support for Lorraine's rule reached new heights. The remaining opposition in the council went quiet, unable to criticize a leader who'd just won a war. Lady Severin approached Jake at the victory celebration, a rare smile on her face. "I owe you an apology, human. I did not think you would survive your first month. Yet here you are, a veteran of war and still standing beside our princess." "I am hard to kill," Jake said lightly. "Trust me, people have tried." "So I have heard." Severin's expression turned serious. "You have earned something more valuable than respect. You have earned fear. The nobles know you are not just a consort but a genuine threat to anyone who moves against the princess. That will keep you both safer than any number of guards." She was right. Jake had become more than just Lorraine's husband. He was a player in the Empire's political game, with his own network of allies and enemies. The thought was exhausting. He'd wanted simple. He'd gotten the opposite. Later, alone in their chambers, Lorraine asked the question he'd been dreading. "Do you regret this? All of it?" Jake considered lying, but the bond made that pointless. She would feel the truth. "Sometimes, when I cannot sleep because I am calculating how many people want me dead. When I remember what it felt like to be nobody, responsible for nothing but myself. When I think about how my life used to be simple. And now it is complicated and terrifying, and I would not trade it for anything." He pulled her close. "You gave me purpose, Lorraine. You gave me a reason to be brave. I did not know I could be this person until you showed me I could." "You were always this person," she corrected. "I just gave you a reason to reveal it." They sat in comfortable silence, war heroes and political symbols, and underneath it all, just 2 people who'd chosen each other against all reason. The universe kept throwing impossible challenges at them, and they kept surviving. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything. Tomorrow would bring new crises, The border worlds needed rebuilding. The families of the dead needed support. The Empire needed healing. But tonight, they had peace. They had each other. They had survived. Jake felt Lorraine's mind touching his, sharing memories of their bonding ceremony. The terror and pain and the moment everything aligned. They had become something new that day, something neither fully Valorian nor fully human, something uniquely theirs. "I love you," Lorraine said. The first time she'd used those exact words aloud. "I love you too," Jake replied, meaning it completely. They fell asleep tangled together, two minds touching across the bond, dreaming shared dreams of a future where maybe, just maybe, they would not have to fight quite so hard to survive each day. The assassination attempt came during the Reconstruction Summit, 3 months after the war ended. Jake was reviewing supply manifests for the border worlds when his psychic sense screamed danger. He dove sideways as the window behind his desk exploded inward, a sniper bolt scorching the air where his head had been. His security team rushed in, shields raised, returning fire toward the distant building where the shot originated. Lorraine's presence flooded his mind, panicked and furious. "Are you hurt?" "I am fine." They missed. Jake stayed low while his guards secured the room. The sniper was already gone, vanished into the capital's crowded streets. Professional work, expensive work. This was the 14th attempt on Jake's life since the war ended. Lorraine had survived 9 attempts herself. Their enemies had learned that frontal assaults failed, so they were trying attrition, death by 1,000 cuts. Eventually, the thinking went, one assassin would get lucky. "We need to end this," Jake said that evening. They were in the secure war room, surrounded by military advisors and intelligence analysts. "We cannot live like this forever. The problem is identification," Intelligence Director Tavok explained. "We know several noble houses are funding these attempts. We lack proof that would justify arrests. Then we get proof." Jake studied the holographic display showing financial networks. Money always leaves a trail. These assassins do not work for free. We have traced the funds, but they pass through so many intermediaries that we cannot definitively link them to specific nobles. Tavok gestured at the complex web of transactions. By the time the money reaches the assassins, it has been laundered through shell companies, criminal syndicates, and off-world accounts. "What if we do not try to trace the money?" Lorraine said slowly. "What if we offer the assassins a better deal?" Everyone turned to stare at her. She smiled, but it was not kind. "Assassins are mercenaries. They work for the highest bidder. What if we become the highest bidder? You want to hire assassins to betray their employers?" Commander Zane sounded skeptical. "I want to offer amnesty and payment to any assassin who provides evidence against the nobles hiring them." Lyron's eyes glinted. "Make the offer public. Make it generous. Force our enemies to question whether their hired killers will stay loyal." "It could work," Jake said thoughtfully. "Criminals have no real loyalty. Show them a better profit margin and they will flip." The offer went out the next day, broadcast across every communication channel in the Empire. Full amnesty, substantial payment, and protected relocation for any assassin who provided actionable evidence against those hiring them. The noble houses erupted in outrage, claiming this was entrapment and dishonoring ancient codes of conduct. 3 assassins came forward within the first week. Their testimony led to the arrest of 2 minor nobles and 1 high-ranking military officer. But the real value was the paranoia it created. Every noble who'd hired an assassin now had to wonder if their hired killer would take the amnesty deal. Trust broke down. The attempts slowed, then nearly stopped. But the architects of the conspiracy remained hidden. Someone powerful was coordinating the opposition, Someone smart enough to insulate themselves from direct evidence. Jake and Lyra knew the enemy was still out there, plotting and waiting. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Lady Severin requested a private audience, arriving at night through secret passages. She looked nervous, an expression Jake had never seen on the normally confident noble. "I have information," she said without preamble, "but sharing it puts my family at risk." "Tell us," Lyraean said gently. "We will protect you." Severin took a breath. "There is a faction within the council, nobles who believe the Empire should return to isolationist policies. No alien contact, no human integration. They call themselves the Purists. I was approached to join after the bonding ceremony. I refused, but I learned enough to know they are dangerous." "How many members?" Jake asked. "At least 30 council members, possibly more. They meet in secret, use encrypted communications. Their leader is someone with significant influence." She paused. "I believe it is High Chancellor Morvek." The room went silent. Morvek was the second most powerful person in the Empire after Lyraean, overseeing the entire council. If he was leading the conspiracy, he had the resources and authority to orchestrate everything. "Do you have proof?" Tavok demanded. "Only circumstantial evidence. Meetings he attended that align with purist gatherings, financial connections to shell companies we have been tracking. It is not enough for arrest, but enough to warrant investigation." Severin met Lyraean's eyes. "I am bringing this to you because the Purists are planning something major. I do not know what, but the timeline is soon." Within days, they had to act fast but carefully. Arresting Morvek without solid proof would tear the council apart. But waiting risked whatever the Purists were planning. Jake and Lyran made a decision that would have been unthinkable months ago. They would set a trap. The next day, Lyraean announced she was pregnant. It was a lie, but a convincing one. The palace erupted in celebration. Security was increased for the announcement ceremony, which would be held in 3 days. The whole empire would be watching. If the Purists want to strike, this is their opportunity, Lyraean explained to her inner circle. Maximum visibility, maximum impact. They will not be able to resist. "And if you are wrong," Commander Zane asked, "if they do not take the bait, then we learn I am a terrible strategist." Lyran's mental voice carried grim humor to Jake. "But I do not think I am wrong." The next 3 days were tense. Security swept the ceremony location repeatedly. Every guest was screened, every servant verified. Jake barely slept, his psychic sense stretched to its limits trying to detect threats. Lyran maintained her public face, glowing with false maternal joy while her mind worked through tactical calculations. The ceremony began at noon. The Grand Plaza was filled with thousands of citizens, all cheering their princess. Holographic displays broadcast the event across the empire. Lyran stood on the palace balcony, radiant in ceremonial robes, Jake beside her. She began her speech, talking about hope and the future. Jake felt it before it happened. Wrongness radiating from multiple sources. Not from the crowd, but from inside the palace. He spun, psychic sense screaming. Guards, inside positions, now. The attack came from palace security itself. 20 guards simultaneously drew weapons, targeting Lyran and Jake. But the trap had worked. These were not real guards, but purist agents who had infiltrated weeks ago. Lyraean's real security team had been positioned specifically to counter this exact scenario. The plaza descended into chaos. Citizens screamed and fled. The fake guards fought desperately, knowing they were doomed. Lyraean and Jake were rushed inside, shielded by layers of protection. The firefight lasted minutes, brutal and efficient. When it ended, all 20 attackers were dead or captured, but the evidence they provided was priceless. Under interrogation, they confirmed Morvek had recruited them, trained them, ordered the attack. More importantly, they had recordings of his instructions, undeniable proof of his treason. The High Chancellor was arrested within hours, along with 27 other council members identified as purists. The conspiracy collapsed. Without leadership and facing overwhelming evidence, the remaining purists either fled the empire or begged for mercy. The council was decimated, requiring massive restructuring. But the threat was ended. The shadow organization that had tried to destroy Lyran's rule was broken. Jake and Lyran stood on the balcony that night, looking out over the capital. The city lights stretched to the horizon, millions of lives going about their business, unaware of how close they had come to civil war. "We did it," Jake said quietly. "We actually survived. More than survived." Lyrian leaned against him. "We built something, a partnership that our enemies could not break." She paused. "I am sorry I lied about the pregnancy. I know why you did it. The threat needed to be real enough to draw them out." Jake smiled. "Though now the entire empire thinks you are having my baby. That is going to be awkward to explain." "Perhaps we should make it true," Lyrian suggested. "Not immediately, but someday, when things are more stable." The idea both terrified and excited Jake. A child would be unprecedented, human and Valorian DNA combined. The medical challenges alone would be immense, but it would also be proof that their love was not just political theater. It would be real and living and undeniable. "Someday," he agreed, "when we are not fighting for our lives every other week." The empire stabilized over the following months. New council members were appointed. Younger nobles who had proven their loyalty during the crisis. Trade agreements were negotiated with human colonies, opening economic opportunities that benefited both species. The border worlds were rebuilt with Lyran's promised autonomy, becoming partners rather than subjects. Jake's role evolved from consort to genuine co-ruler. His human perspective proved valuable in diplomatic negotiations. His psychic abilities, now fully developed, made him a formidable political operator. He was no longer just Lyraean's husband, but a power in his own right, respected and feared in equal measure. But the best moments were still the quiet ones. Late nights in their chambers, minds touching through the bond, sharing thoughts and dreams without words. Morning training sessions with Zane, where Jake had finally progressed to merely terrible instead of completely hopeless. Walks through the palace gardens, Lyraean pointing out flowers from a dozen worlds while Jake made terrible puns about their names. One evening, exactly 1 year after the bonding ceremony, they returned to the chamber where it had all begun. The carved stones still stood in their circle. The symbols still hurt to look at directly. High Priestess Kaelin met them there, older, but still sharp. "You wish to renew your vows?" she asked. "We wish to acknowledge what we have become," Lyran corrected. "The bonding changed us. We want to honor that transformation." Kaelin studied them both. "You have grown strong together. The bond that should have been impossible is now unbreakable." She gestured to the platform. "Stand where you stood before." They climbed the steps, hands joining automatically. The year had taught them so many things: how to fight together, how to rule together, how to exist in two different worlds simultaneously and make it work. The bond that had started as a desperate gamble had become the foundation of everything they were. Kaelin began the ceremony, but this time there was no pain. The merger happened smoothly. two minds that already knew each other intimately touching once more. Jake felt Lorraine's pride in what they had built, her love for him that had grown from recognition to something deep and unshakable, her hope for their future together. Lorraine felt Jake's amazement that this was his life now, his determination to be worthy of her faith in him, his love that had evolved from attraction to something that defined his entire existence, his certainty that he would do it all again without hesitation. The ceremony ended. They were still bonded, still partners, still Jake and Liren, but renewed, recommitted, ready for whatever challenges came next. As they left the chamber, Jake thought about that moment in the throne room a year ago, when he had whispered his impossible wish, and Lorraine had smiled and said, "Then you shall." It had seemed like madness then. It still seemed like madness now, if he was being honest. An alien princess and a human freight hauler, bonded for life, ruling an interstellar empire together. But it was their madness, their choice, their truth. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had asked for money instead? Liren asked, amused by his thoughts. Every day, Jake lied. Then, honestly, not once. This is better than money. Even with the assassination attempts, especially with the assassination attempts. It keeps life interesting. They walked through the palace together, minds touching, hands linked, ready for tomorrow and all the tomorrows after that. The universe had tried to break them and failed. Their enemies had tried to tear them apart and failed. The impossible odds had tried to crush them and failed. They were still here, still together, still standing. And that, Jake realized, was the real happy ending. Not perfection, but perseverance. Not a fairy tale, but a partnership that refused to break no matter what was thrown at it. "I love you," he thought to Lorraine. "I love you too," she replied. Always. They had chosen each other once, in a moment of chaos and impossible hope. And they would keep choosing each other every day for the rest of their lives. That was the promise they had made, the vow that mattered more than any ceremony. The stars wheeled overhead, infinite and eternal. Somewhere out there, new threats were forming, new challenges waiting. But Jake and Liren would face them together, bonded in mind and heart, human and Valorian, impossible and real. Their story was just beginning.